Great addition. All right, we got Mary coming. Ben? Gary, you ready for State Fair?
We're working on it.
You got, I know it's a lot of work.
What is it? It's the bison.
You know,
wild rice bison.
I am unabashed by when I'm out visiting Oakland, Montana. It's bison burgers, bison steak, bison everything.
Do this?
We're excited.
Good. All right.
Ready?
It's your place.
Okay. Hi, I'm Mary Methune, and I want to welcome you all to the orchard. Thanks for coming. It's a joy to have you. It's a little early yet, so the apples aren't quite ready, but they will be soon, so come back. We have apple crisp and a la mode for you, and we just are really happy to have you. And just some details, the bathrooms, internet, and air conditioning are across the street, so welcome.
Yay. Well, Mary, thank you. Thank you to you and Ray. Thanks to Ben. They gave all credit of managing the place. Yep. 10,000 trees, 16 varieties here, and kind of another spot of pride for Minnesota in the diversity of our ag economy. $100 billion industry stretching to all corners of the state, a powerhouse not just nationally but globally on feeding, fueling, clothing the world, and innovation. And many times folks might think of the row crops, the soybean and the corn, but our specialty crops, and especially apples, we're well known for. And so we're out here today, and you're going to hear from some of the authors and the legislators who worked on a good bipartisan farm bill here in Minnesota. And I will note, they got it done. It's critical that we get these farm bills done. I know nationally we still have some work to do on it, but the farm bill is so important for so many reasons, especially for greater Minnesota, where it's things like connections of broadband. But it's also making sure we're there to support the next generation of farmers. We're there to do the work on the biosecurity around these things. You'll hear Commissioner Peterson maybe talk a little bit about, or some of these folks talk about avian influenza, and Minnesota's the model on how you tackle some of these things as they come in and threaten the livelihoods and threaten the food supply in many cases that the world depends on us to get right. And that's why in the farm bill I'm really proud. Things like the disaster counts, things that we do on milk pricing to make sure the volatility in this. This is a very volatile business to be in producing anything, and it's certainly markets, it's workforce issues, it's commodity prices, and then as we were just discussing here, it's weather. Folks who are paying attention to what's happening out there in the plains of North Dakota this afternoon, impact here, whether it's hail or high winds, all of those things impact the livelihoods. But I think for many of us, that ag economy is part of a culture of who we are. And I was saying as a teacher, I know better than to say this because I know my teacher friends don't like it, but fall is coming. And this place will be opening up. And I think for many of us as families, a visit to an orchard like Applejack is a highlight, to be able to get out there, to be able to pick and to get fresh produce, and to be able to see the traditions and the culture of what we do. So I'm glad to be here today. We're going to do this ceremonial signing of a bill that got nearly unanimous support in the House. Folks that got together. I think, again, that got lost a little bit in the tragedy of June was the bipartisan work to pull a budget over the finish line, and not just any budget, but a really fiscally responsible one, but one that also leaned into the safety net process and the things that made Minnesota great, especially around ag. And so really proud of this, really proud of the work that the Ag Committee does. They've got research scientists over there, they've got field work, we've got all of the things that help keep Minnesota competitive and keep folks like Mary and Ray on the land they love, doing the things they love, and creating jobs around here, and not allowing people to jailbreak or do things on that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our chair in the Ag Committee. You're going to hear from a couple of these folks who were able to work on this. Chair Putnam has been there. I was with him last week in St. Cloud talking about the rural economy out there and the investments that were being made. Now to have him here and the work that he was able to do to get this thing over the finish line was really good work. With that, Eric Putnam.
Thanks, man.
I'd like, if I may, if you'll indulge me just for a second, for us all to acknowledge the passing of Senator Bruce Anderson, who I think we might actually be in his district. If not, we're awful close to it. He was a stalwart member of the Ag Committee, a powerful contributor, and his spirit will be missed. But hopefully we can live with it. Now, when it comes to this Ag bill that we just passed, we did a lot of good. You know, a lot of you know that agriculture is a very difficult occupation. It's a difficult way of life. It's not just a job, it's a way of life, and it's challenging because of all the things you can't control. It's our job as legislators and with the governor's leadership not to solve all the problems, not to make it rain or make it not rain, but to put people who work in agriculture in places where they can respond to some of the contingencies they have to address. And I think we did that very well this past session. You know, a lot of times we praise bipartisanship, and we should, but sometimes bipartisanship is just an act. In the Ag Committee, it's not. It's something we take seriously. You know, we've gone to almost 100 farms over the last couple of years, the Senate Ag Committee has. Not just because we need to learn more about agriculture, but because we need to build relationships with the people who actually do it. So again, I'm grateful here to have a chance to hang out at Applejack Orchards and get to know some more people in the agricultural economy. It's because of those meetings, it's because of the conversations that we've had with farmers that we came up with the bill that we did this last session. I like to think of us as being kind of post-partisan. We work together, Republicans and Democrats, but because we're in ag, we're just trying to solve problems, and that's all we care about. And I think that spirit manifests in this bill as we pass it this time around. So we put lots of resources into the Emergency Response Fund because we don't know what's going to happen. And those resources have been drained due to some uncertainty with the federal government. But we are doing what we can in Minnesota to make sure that farmers have the support that they need given their difficult careers, lives, and operations. So we've also protected some stuff that we did in prior years. You know, the governor mentioned dairy. Dairy is a very challenging market right now. And we protected the Dairy with an Eye program. We protected the Grain Indemnity Fund. We protected all these great interventions that we made in past years, even in the context of a difficult budget crisis. And then we also supported things like processing, First District Federation Dairy. We were going to help them be able to do what they're doing. We put some resources into new innovative ways of doing agriculture. And we again invested in turkey lasers. You know, we talk a lot about the price of this and the price of that. Minnesota has done more than any other state to deal with both the health crisis of avian influenza and the cost of eggs. Thanks in large part to the governor's leadership, Minnesota has done more than any other state to help with the price of eggs through turkey lasers, which, just so you know, work with chickens too. But it's not quite as fun to say. So we put more resources into that program too. We did fantastic work this past session, both in terms of the result and how we did it. And I'm grateful for the example set by the governor and by my colleagues in the Ag Committee, both on our committee in the Senate and our friends in the House. And we did that also with the help of some great advocates, people who are involved in agriculture, like, for example, the president of Minnesota's Farmers Union, Gary Wish, who I think is up next.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Senator.
Thank you, Senator. Gary Wish, I'm president of Minnesota Farmers Union. We farm with my son by Renville, Minnesota, not a little bit southwest of here, but really want to thank, it's been mentioned already, but I want to thank the governor, the chairs, and the committee, and the Commissioner Peterson, and members on both sides of the aisle. We really came together to pass a bipartisan bill. You know, it was actually there was a first bill passed, I believe it addressed some of the grain fund that was passed the year previously in Minnesota. And the last bill before the regular session passed was the ag bill. So it shows the importance of agriculture. You know, the agriculture, we're probably 25-30% of the state's economy. Less than 1% of the people are farmers. But it's important to all people in the rural communities and in the whole state, the whole state's economy. And really, we're on an apple farm today. All types of farmers are important. We need more farmers. We need all types of farmers to have a strong economy. Farmers are facing enough uncertainty, things out of their control. So it's really appreciative of our state, with the governor and our legislature, both sides of the aisle, how they came together and addressed agriculture. There was Senator Putman mentioned some of the increased funding. We increased funding for the meat processing and local food processing, and also the first standing up the first local assistance food assistance program, and some money for food banks. Some people are struggling out there, and it's no fault of their own. A lot of times they're working, sometimes a couple jobs already, but they don't have enough money to support their families. So anything we can do as a state to help them. As farmers, we produce food. We want to feed people, so we need to care for our people or care for our neighbors. We've kind of gotten away from that, but really it's been a pleasure working with the legislature and the governor. There's times it's challenging. We all understand that, but they came together and got it done, and appreciate all their support for that. And I think I'm supposed to introduce Dan now, President of Farm Bureau.
Thanks, Gary.
Absolutely.
So I'm Dan Glessing. I serve as president of Minnesota Farm Bureau. I'm a dairy and crop farmer from Wright County, which we are in Wright County. So close to home, appreciate that. But to the points that have been made already, there is a lot of good stuff in this bill. There's a lot of intricacies within agriculture and farming. Various sectors of agriculture have different challenges. This bill did a lot to help create some certainty there and really keep that food being produced for the consumers that really trust farmers to make it. A lot of good work went into it, a lot of good conversations, whether it's the Department of Ag, the Governor's Office, the Senate, the House. A lot of good conversations that our members have had with these folks to get to a good solution. There's always more that can be done, and we'll work on that next session, but this bill that was passed and is being signed today is a good bill, and appreciate all the work that these folks put into it. So, who are we? Tom?
Thank you. Yeah, we'll come back. Tom's going to get questions. We're going to sign this thing. We'll take some questions, but I'm going to put in my plug for these two guys with Dan and Gary that work together. They represent a big chunk of agriculture. They're multi-commodity groups. They're there at the Capitol bringing voices there of folks to make sure that they're heard. And as you heard Senator Putnam say, it's those conversations that drive the bill. I'm going to give them my PSA for both of them. Coming up here, we got Farm Fest out in Redwood Falls coming up. The best pork chop in America will be found at the Farm Bureau booth. I'm telling you that. And then we've got the Great Minnesota Get Together, the Farmers Union booth. Everybody looks for what the new food is. Bison meatball sub this year. So that's my early plug. Let's sign this. We'll come back and take some on topic and then some off topic if you've got them. That is the best pork chop. Absolutely.
There's secrets to that.
It's those guys from Lincoln County who cook them.
Yeah, right.
So. Mary, we're going to give your plug for when opening day is and when everybody gets out here.
Ben, you want to call it? What's opening day?
Well, this side is usually Labor Day weekend.
All right.
Labor Day weekend.
This side, you got two sides?
Yep. We've got a cafe over there where we have I don't see our baker. Is trees here?
Cafe side and some bagged apples will be available the 11th of August. Fingers crossed for varieties,
wow.
but the orchard for pick your own, that's Labor Day weekend.
And that's Ben. He's in charge of this whole place. I'm just a figurehead.
Hey, Ben.
All right, and we got it. Here we go. I got to say, Mary, last fall I was in orchards in places like Pennsylvania, and I had to tell them how their orchards were pretty good. Not great like ours, but pretty good. So the Pennsylvanians were showing me their orchards. And so.
Well, you were a good sport. We got to be.
Again, want to thank everybody who was involved in this. There's a couple of areas that really, really do have Minnesotans' inputs on them, and I would make the case the ag and the veterans bills are ones that just really have really deep bipartisan work, and it comes from the advocates who are out there. And so really proud of this work. And we've got Commissioner Peterson here. He's got some of the details. We'll take some on-topic questions about the farm bill and then any off-topic.
Governor, you mentioned repeatedly it's a bipartisan bill. You had bipartisan chairs
Yeah.
in the Senate at one point and in the House. Where are Republicans? Did you invite them? You're in a Republican district.
We did, and I think Senator Putnam and I will echo that to Senator Anderson's widow Ruth and to the family the loss there. I believe that's it, and they were invited. I believe this is Representative Hudson's district. Is that correct? Invited too, but I think what you'd see is, and you'll hear the bipartisan nature of this, especially these groups that are up here. They represent a pretty broad group of folks. And maybe they just didn't want to be with me. I always wonder on that. So.
Can you talk more about the turkey lasers? And
Yep. Look at that. He would love to talk about the turkey lasers. So.
Well, first off, I think with the scheduling of this tour, for a little bit greater context, the Senate Ag Committee does tours throughout the summer every year. And when we do, we invite all the legislators in the district which we visit and all the members of the committee. This visit was actually scheduled as a regular tour of the Senate Ag Committee and did not become important until the governor was going to pop in just a couple days ago. So I want to provide like further context, and so why our Republican friends who undoubtedly want to be here weren't able to is potentially because of the briefness in that scheduling front. The turkey lasers. It's fun to say it's a wacky idea, but really what they are is an incredibly important way of combating bird flu. Those of you who may know a little bit more about avian influenza, you know that it comes through waterfowl. So when a duck is hanging out on your farm and it starts talking to your turkeys or your chickens, it gets them sick. So we got to keep the ducks and the geese away from our barns that have chickens and turkeys in them. And so, you know, when you go to the airport, they have these infrared lasers that discourage birds from getting within your jet propulsion or things like that, messing with your planes. What we did under the leadership of Commissioner Peterson, we did this 2 or 3 years ago. We did it again this year, put some more resources into it because it's 99.9% effective. We created a cost share program because, as you might expect, lasers are pretty expensive. So we created a cost share program to split some of the cost of that with some of our poultry farmers. It's been an incredibly popular program, but it's also been very successful. And one of the things that we do in agriculture in particular is we try and solve problems after they've happened, but we also, because we're in ag, we think about these things before they do. And as I said earlier, through this program and some of the other work Commissioner Peterson has done, Minnesota has done tremendous things to keep the price of eggs as low as possible and to keep Thanksgiving safe for everyone.
What exactly do they do? How they work?
So I'm just going to make it up because I don't really know. So it's an infrared laser that goes out that only birds can see, and birds don't like it when they do, so they don't go through it. So what you actually do is you put a laser on either side of your turkey barn, and so it puts out a kind of full wide radius of this infrared beam, and the ducks and the geese don't go near it. So it stops them from getting close to the barn. It's a great program, and it's something, again, that we started in Minnesota 3 years ago, and luckily, again, through the leadership of our legislators, especially like Senator Seeberger, who's here with us today too, we were able to put more resources into this program to let more and more turkey and chicken and poultry producers be able to afford this way of stopping their flocks from getting sick.
You know, a lot of talk over the last several months about the potential effects of tariffs on imports, exports, and that keeps changing. Where do we stand today in terms of the effect or and the impact too of this of the latest budget bill?
It's hard to know from day to day where we stand on the tariffs. Actually, as you're all aware of, the president in the EU came to an agreement, supposedly agreement yesterday, on a 15% tariff, which it's higher than what we've had. You know, we're glad that hopefully that's behind us, but that is a 15% tax on all American consumers, and that part doesn't get talked about enough. Tariffs, in the president's first term, he put a tariff that time primarily on China. Soybeans is our biggest market to China, or China is our biggest market for our soybeans. Before the tariff went on, we were China's #1 supplier of soybeans. Now, Brazil is the #1 supplier. We've moved down the list, you know, the percentage-wise quite a bit. We've lost the share of that market. We'll never get that back. The talk of all these tariffs, that's a concern as a farmer, as you're dealing with the uncertainty that we have with the weather coming through just the last day or two, and maybe again tonight. Even though we come up with tariff agreements, first of all, we need to trade. There's no doubt. We're fortunate in the United States. We raise more crops and livestock than we can consume domestically. So we do need to trade. You know, we're in a global market. You know, we're so entrenched in a global market that is part of our livelihood. That's part of the farmer's income. Right now, we have prices are depressed. The inputs are high and the commodity or the prices are low. So it's not a good time on the farm right now. So more of this uncertainty hurts us, and I worry more about the long-term relationship, because right at the present time the tariff talks change from day to day, so you don't know. As you're dealing with another country, it's no different than if you're dealing with a neighbor in a business or a family, in whether you're renting land or just a business or just in a family. You build your relationship on trust, and that's the part that I believe we're damaging the United States. And I think that's long-term damage because some of these countries are going to find other markets. We're not the only ones in the world that raise crops or raise livestock. There's other countries doing it too. So we're damaging some of our relationship, and that's what I think. Even though we come through all this, say you get agreements signed with everybody, we've lost that trust, and I think that's damaging. The Japan agreement was agreed to a week or so ago, but then I saw misleading comments on that, so we're not sure what's actually been agreed and if anything's been signed. So there's a lot of, it seems like a lot of stuff that just likes to hit the press. I don't know. As a farmer, and got family that farms in our membership in rural communities, I'm concerned with the way this is being handled. So,
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. To Gary's point, it does create uncertainty, and to know where you're at in any one day is hard to follow. I happen to serve on the American Farm Bureau Trade Advisory Committee, and so we have monthly meetings to try and have those conversations and continue. A lot of these markets have been farmer driven, on the agricultural side, and so we are continuing to have those conversations to try and find pathways for trade. And you look at the potash mines in Canada, we're a heavy user of those. We were glad to see that exemption, and try and navigate through the uncertainty that tariffs create. We had a conversation, or we had a meeting with the Canadian embassy here a couple weeks ago. We were talking with those folks to really emphasize the importance of that trade partnership, because when you look at Canada, Mexico, and China are our three biggest markets, and really trying to find a way. USMCA is up for renegotiation, or those renegotiations will start later this year, and so we're just trying to make sure that we can find a path forward and really find a market for our products. We are blessed in this nation to be food secure. A lot of people don't really fully realize that. Through COVID you saw some of that, but that motorcycle likes to make rounds. Through COVID you saw some of that, some appreciation for the food that we have here, but really looking forward, trying to continue to have those conversations and navigate our way through that. So.
Any more on topic?
And is there anything in this particular bill that helps supply any sort of safety cushion or help for farmers in the uncertain times of what tariffs could do?
Well, again, Tom Peterson, Commissioner of Agriculture. As the governor said in our budget 2 years ago, we were able to increase the size of our trade office, and we were able to maintain that funding with support from a lot of the groups here, including the corn, soybean growers. But that helps us. We have an in-market representative, for example, in Taiwan. It helps us conduct trade missions, both inbound and outbound. And so that bill, that was kind of a new thing. So we were glad to protect that and continue to grow our trade in Minnesota. So there is that piece of it in there for sure.
And too, that reconciliation bill that was just passed doubled the market or the trade money to help with that.
We'll keep continuing to push our markets elsewhere. And I said domestic markets, and made the case on sustainable aviation fuel and other things we can create domestic markets, and taking a look at the impact of a reduction of the SNAP program. Of course, that's a market for a lot of agricultural products that go there, and these are the folks that sell them to that. But thank you all again. I'm going to remind you, folks looking for a fall location, Applejack Orchard, get out here. Mary, bring your kids out here, get out here. Great opportunities to do that. That's all going to be starting to happen here pretty soon as we get into those great months of fall in Minnesota. Thank you to all of you. I'll be glad to take some off-topic questions if you guys want to avoid being associated with that. And so, or you can take them if you want. But please, Mary.
Governor, what about new concerns about Capitol security? There was a man named
Yeah.
on the Senate floor claiming to be you, broke in, was released a couple of times.
The guy claimed to be me in the Capitol?
That's what we're hearing. He said he was the governor.
Oh, he said he was the governor. He didn't say he was me. He didn't look quite like me. Look, in all seriousness about this is a serious situation, and it's dangerous. And I think the conversations that are happening after the tragedy of the murder of Melissa and Mark, and of course the miraculous, almost tragedy with John and Yvette, there's more we're doing. These legislators drive themselves. They go out there, their families, they have people out there. And the reality that we're in, all of us hate it, is it's just much more dangerous. And I think the question needs to be answered is, how does someone get to spend that much time there? How does this individual continue to come back? And of course, we're balancing against a very Minnesota tradition of open governance and walking through the door. And we always, when all of us give speeches, we talk about welcome to your house. This guy took it literally, obviously, and that is a problem that we have to strike that proper balance. I would just give you, for example, we had a pretty significant briefing this morning after the weekend. I was engaged on the weekend, but today, having a little bit of space in between it, then there's just a couple of things that they went and looked at it, that I think what I heard this morning from my team was certainly the states surrounding us, that there's no state that allows so many open access points, that you can get in from any corner anywhere. The door the individual came through did not set off an alarm, and because of the rules, and rightfully so, the separations between the branches, the House and the Senate have control of their chambers, and I'm not trying to advertise this, it will come out there because you want to keep your security things not as public as possible, but there were no cameras in that room. And that's rightfully so for the proceedings that go on, the democracy and some of that. But a question is that those are all the things that need to be answered. Access points, cameras and who's monitoring it, who's doing and walking through the building. How do we funnel folks through? I mean, does it come to the point where everybody comes through the front door? And at least you know that of who's in the building. So it's serious. I know this week already they'll be convening, the 4 caucus leaders will be sitting down with the Department of Public Safety, start talking through. There may be need for some legislative fixes in this. We'll listen to the experts who weigh in on what should be done. Again, it's striking that balance. You can't have Capitol Fortress, but you certainly can't have somebody like this, unfettered access to the Capitol and more dangerous access to the legislators as they're there.
Governor, do you not have unilateral control as head of the Department of Public Safety to make these changes, to have already made these changes? Do you need legislation?
They have Capitol grounds, yes they do, but not totally. And of course, when the legislators are outside of there, it becomes the local jurisdictions, as we saw in the case of whether it's Brooklyn Center or Brooklyn Park or whoever's there. It's the chambers. The question I was asking on this is that the way it's written, that whether the cameras are in there or not. Now, just to be clear, would a camera have in there made any difference? Where are the cameras at? That's a question I don't know yet. But I think once again, a lot of this questions comes back to a new world where this type of stuff happens. The coordination question that is always an issue in any type of these things. Are we coordinating and communicating well enough? And then how do we make sure we strike that proper balance between the freedom of the people to access their legislators and the safety and security, again, of legislators, but of the public, who's also in there too.
Was this guy, was he in the building already when it was unlocked? Because you need a key to get in after hours. Do you know those details?
He came in the afternoon. I don't want to get the timeline wrong on this, but the way I understand it, he came in the afternoon, left at some point, came back again, and then of course the situation where he was put into the medical center for an evaluation. He was released with no notification, and the folks at the Capitol called and said, we're checking up on this guy, how is he? And they said, well, we already let him go. By that time, he'd made his way back.
There are some senators calling for an audit after June 14th. Do you support that? Should there be some sort of assessment of what played out?
Well, I think they will, yeah. I think we need to know, and as more information comes out, times that was there. Once again, I think you can always learn from these things. The hope is you never have to replicate a response. It can always be better. I think you would have been hard pressed to find anybody that would imagine we would have a political assassination at 2:40 a.m. on a Friday night and what that meant for the rest. But I think it would be, it would behoove us well to understand exactly what happened, where it played out, what is possible. I think the assumption is you're always going to do all you can to stop this. But what we know in a free society, if someone's committed enough to doing some of these things, it is challenging. That is not an excuse for not doing everything possible and making it more difficult. And so I think when we get together, and I think the conversations are happening, I think law enforcement in all of these jurisdictions is looking at their own procedures. I think one of the big questions, as we've seen and we saw it, at different times, how do you coordinate large responses to this and what happens? So I certainly support them.
What about the advisory commission? Lieutenant Governor has called a meeting now, but several reports saying statutorily hasn't called the required meetings and maybe not released the reports fully. Have you talk to her directly about that?
Yeah, and I think we've talked about what comes next. And I think a lot of this, like the Capitol Grounds things, is I think when people think of the Capitol Grounds, they're thinking about, is there a flag plaza? Is there a statue on the ground? I think in a modern world, again, whether it's unfortunate or not, it's a reality and we have to do it, is you have to look through the lens of security. Security of the legislators and security of the public are the top priorities. And so, yeah, I think shifting that. I would ask the question, is that the right model as it stands now? It's been that way. I couldn't trace you back on this, but a lot of things we do out of tradition that have been done since statehood. Well, things were a lot different in 1858 than they are in 2025. So I think the question, the legislators, the public safety professionals, all of us will get together and say, is there a better way to do this? Is there a better control of who should be in charge of this? And again, in so many things, we have the professionals carrying it out, but in a democracy, it is the legislators and the elected officials who have to be part of that chain of command. So I'm open to how we look at that.
Governor, on fraud, U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson said that fraud could surpass $1 billion in Minnesota. Do you agree with that number?
Yes.
And should your administration be held accountable for that?
Yes. Well, I think you're always accountable for when things happen, but I think the accountability piece that we're going to have to try and understand is we've seen fraud, whether it's at United Healthcare, we've seen it at other places. The question is in state government, our job is to carry out the programs to try and get the resources to the people who need them. We work with our partners in the counties and so forth, but I think on this one, the question I'm asking is the safeguards in place strong enough? And I want to give a thanks to the U.S. Attorney's Office. They are doing incredible work partnering together. I think we have to have a hard look at, are the resources there? The legislature provided many of those. They changed some of the statutes, and I will tell you just candidly, I am using one aggressively today in stopping payments to most of the people involved in this program. Those have happened today, and the payments that were scheduled to go today are not going out to them. I fully expect some of those folks will sue the state of Minnesota, but I think we're in a position right now is a trust but verify that we want you to get in the program. We want to provide what I think is a great program, but is not being carried out in a way if you can have this much access to fraud. And any time, especially during COVID and post-COVID, when you have that much money moving, and the idea was to move it as quickly as possible, folks will take advantage of that. They try and defraud you on an individual basis, they try and defraud businesses, and they defraud government. So my goal is, and thanks to the legislature, we've got some pretty good tools right now, but I think in talking to the U.S. Attorney, one of the things we have to think more of is these people are being arrested and they're going to prison. And right now, the folks who are involved in this, you will be going to prison. The U.S. Attorney's on it. They will get them. They're going to go to prison. We'll do what we can. I think the expectation is strengthening the front end of this. And I think all of us are going to have to candidly recognize there is going to be legitimate organizations and legitimate need for people in good programs that are going to just have to be a little bit slower and a little more barriers put in place, because it's proven right now the folks can find the loopholes, because there's good folks using these programs and making a difference, but the folks who are defrauding them. So my goal is to make sure that we use the tools given, and I will tell you today, and about 50 of the largest recipients of those are not going to get paid, and my expectation is that will extend further.
The housing stability program?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Let's do one more and then we're going to do a tour.
Sure.
There's one.
Governor, could you talk about your plans to postpone your announcement as to whether you'll rerun again and where you're at in that headspace?
Yeah, I think this is about I don't think, once again, that there's any given time when you should do this. I've said if I believe I can serve the state and I believe it's in the best interest of being able to do that, and that's what the folks wanted to, that I would make that announcement. And if it's not the case, we'll give enough time for people to do that. I think I talked about this and just candidly with all of you. Speaker Hortman's murder, that is another thing to think about on all sides of this. I think that it's probably prudent to get an announcement out shortly after the state fair, where Minnesotans are paying attention again, the kids are going back to school, and then the folks who's ever going to run will have an opportunity to do that. I would make the argument that Minnesotans are kind of happy when things are going with a shorter election season than a longer one. So kind of shortening up the election season, because you're going to get plenty once that announcement's made. But we're doing it, talking to folks, seeing it. And always, if it's in the best interest to try and serve Minnesota, then that's a decision we'll make. If I believe that there's other things I can do to do that, then that will happen. So I think you could expect an announcement shortly after the state fair. Seems like that's prudent and makes sense. All right, thank you all. Mary, thank you again.
Thank you, sir.
Grateful. Thanks, Gary. Appreciate you guys.
got this issue on the
Yeah, no, there's a great one.